I am so excited to have this conversation with you, Anne, because I've been looking forward to it, having read everything that you have shared with me personally in deciding that you wanted to join me in this conversation. And so I would absolutely love it if you would introduce yourself and give us a little bit of an insight into who you are, what you do, what you're all about, because you can do that far better than I could.
Well, Julie, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Anne Alexander-Sieder. I'm an American actor that ended up moving to Germany for love 30 years ago, met a hot German guy, and changed the course of everything I had planned for my life. I was a working actor back in Chicago, even had my health insurance paid for through SAG-AFTRA, which is a huge accomplishment in America. And I didn't have to have another side gig. So I kind of thought my path was clear. But, that's when God throws you a curveball, and that's what he did. It was just mine was a hot German guy. So I ended up in Germany and became a mom right away and, got into life. And I was always doing acting adjacent things like voiceover, presenting, commercials, but I wasn't really acting. And while those gave me steady income and they were very flexible and fun, it there was always something missing for me. But honestly, I just thought, be happy with what you have. There are people who would love to have that and just stop being so damn greedy, basically. And I basically, lived by that for a very long time. But my son and I had a standard movie date on Friday nights since the time he was a little tiny boy. And we would go without fail to the English language theater in Munich and see kind of whatever was playing that week. And he came to me when he was about 16 years old on Thursday, and he was like, Mom, do you mind if I hang out with my friends tomorrow instead of you? Which, of course, is like, as a mom, we all know this day is coming. And of course, we want it because you want your child to stand on their own 2 feet. But it was still like a bowl of ice water over me. But the thing that it did, and I really have my son to thank for this, because it really gave me a second to go, well, what do I want to do this weekend? I think my husband was away on a golf trip or something. And I just had this whole weekend looming for me alone. And my whole life for the past 17 years have been, what are we going to eat? What are we going to do? What are, we. And all of a sudden it was like, well, what do I want to do? It was like, like this foreign concept. And so I just thought, I would love to take an acting workshop just for the hell of it, just for fun. And so I sat down and I Googled acting workshop Munich English. And unbelievably, one came up. The very next day, it was a weekend workshop with a coach out of LA, and there was one spot open. So I whipped out my credit card. I signed up for it with very high hopes and very low expectations. And I just went thinking, hey, we'll just go check it out. By the end of the weekend, this pilot light that I didn't even know was burning inside of me was like, whew, it was like combusted. I was like on fire. And I knew at that point, like everything that I had hoped it would be, everything that I had hoped I would feel, I felt in that workshop. It was like this coming together with people who I love to hang out with. Like acting is the only job where you can cry all day and go, "My God, that was amazing," And like people who get that. And also the coach saw it. He was like, "You, oh my God, you are on fire with this. You must continue." And I there was sort of like this whole thing. Maybe it was even getting permission in a sense of like someone saying, "You have something valuable to give, and I can see how much you burn for it." In any case, long story short, by Sunday evening, for me, there was no turning back. I knew I needed to relaunch my acting career. But it opened up this whole other can of worms, frankly. And the first one, so many things. First of all, I hadn't acted in 16 years. And so I had no current showreel material. I was now 47 years old, the same age you are right now. So, and that's, I find that this is at 47, this is like this really pivotal point, especially in a woman's life, but probably a man as well, because we're approaching 50 and that is a turning point. And you start thinking, okay, the first half of my life is gone. What am I going to do with the second half of my life? And all of these like kind of existential ideas and fears and wants and desires, excuse me, I'm a little bit sick,
Oh,
start popping up. And in any case, so the very first thing that I realized that I needed because I hadn't acted, really acted in 16 years, was just to get my instrument back in shape, get back in tune, right? And so I needed to do training. And so I looked around Munich and I was like, well, that was amazing, that workshop. Anything else? And of course, there wasn't. And so I thought, okay, fabulous. Okay, that means I can go to London, New York, LA, but obviously that's time prohibitive, cost prohibitive. Even if my son didn't want to hang out with me, I still was his mom. I still had to
yeah.
make dinner, make sure he did his homework. I still had to be around. And so I thought, okay, but here's what I discovered as well. Whenever you have a big problem like that, a big, insurmountable mountain, it looks like, oh my God, this mountain is blocking me from getting past it to what I actually want. Usually the answer to what you want is is just kind of unraveling it. So the actual problem was that there was no training near me on my schedule at the caliber that I wanted it. Okay, that is also the answer. And so I just started reaching out to coaches and asking them, hey, this is who I am and where I'm at. And would you consider coming to Munich and teaching a workshop? And surprisingly, I don't know why surprisingly, but I was surprised that so many responded positively. And so then I set up my very first workshop with a coach out of London, Giles Foreman. Shout out to Giles, he's amazing. And that weekend, first of all, I thought my first thought was just if I could just get a handful of other actors, then I can cover my costs and, maybe pay what I would pay if he were already here in Munich. So, a few €100, whatever. What ended up happening was I sold out and ended up making €1,300 that weekend and getting my training for free. And it set off this kind of chain reaction. So Giles was recommending other coaches. The other participants were like asking me, "Well, when is Giles coming back, or what are you doing next?" And really, it just showed me that I could take what I needed and use that instead of it as it being the obstacle. It was the starting point to getting my problems fixed, basically. And so I did that for about a year and a half. And I was bringing in 2 to 3 coaches a month and averaging like, a thousand to 1,500 income from things that I would have been paying for. And I would call those my big workshops. And then in between, I was organizing rehearsals. So for people who had taken the workshop and for people who were just interested in learning from us what we had learned. So I was also charging for those, but on a much lower scale. But I ended up making, I would say, probably close to 5 grand a month. But the main thing was because it was never about the money for me, and it was never about being an event planner for me and or organizing workshops. It was all about getting what I needed in a way that was also like building community. So I'm still friends and collaborators with some of the people that took that very first workshop. One in particular, Ben Reynolds. We have collaborated on so many different things, from series to short films to auditions, all sorts of different things. So what it ends up doing is there are just so many problems that it solves when you take radical agency and decide I'm going to figure this bleep out, right? I'm going to do this. Come whatever come, I can do this. Because, let's be real, everything is figure outable. Excuse me.
It's okay.
It just really depends on what it is and trying to think about it in a way that's outside of what everybody else is doing. Because if what everybody else was doing was working, everybody would be successful. So that's obviously not working. So it's really important, especially for creatives. And when I say creatives, I mean really across the board, because I call this the curator method, and I really feel like the curator method can be applied to all sorts of different things. Yes, I did it for myself as an actor, but I have since had other people, apply it to different scenarios, situations, all sorts of things, from authors to people who are into language, from people who are into learning about real estate investments. Um, Really anything that you don't need a higher degree for and that you can learn about and or get better at through incremental events is something that you could apply this to. So then just to kind of wrap this up, that first year and a half was all about just getting my training, which I did. And then I was like, okay, done. I will never do those workshops again because they weren't the point. And then I relaunched my acting career. And a few years into that, I realized I was getting typecast a lot and I didn't like the way I was being typecast. So I thought, okay, well, what's missing here is they're not actually seeing the whole picture. So what can I do about that? So I thought, well, I can create a series of short films and show them more of me. So I started doing a short film per month. But of course, even when you have people donating all of their time and talent, they're still expensive because you're still paying for travel and food and equipment and all of these things. So I started putting on workshops just purely for the income. And then that worked. And then I started getting some more interesting auditions and things like that. But I realized also that I was still running again up against the typical problem that all creatives have when you go to networking events, right? And you're there clamoring as this person who wants something from the one person you feel can maybe give you an opportunity to get that thing. So in my case, casting directors who could possibly cast me.
Mhm.
And you're standing there in a circle of vultures around this poor person who's like, oh God, who can rescue me from this thing? First of all, yuck. I mean, to use a technical term, right? That it sucks to be that person who's like, what can you give me? What can I get from you? And I thought I need to find a way to level the playing ground. Like to get eye level with this person so that they can see me as a human being and not just as this clamoring actor. And then I thought of the workshops again. And I thought, well, I bet if I hired them, that would give me an opportunity to talk with them and, give them a platform to share their expertise because most people, sorry, in these creative industries, they love the creatives, and in many cases, there are also people who originally wanted to do that and found a different path. So in most cases, they're very much about trying to help. So give them a platform to share their expertise, to share their insights, to get their eyes on other people's work, to get them paid. And I can also show my work in those things. So I started doing that. I started hiring casting directors, producers, left and right. And that is really when I started to get much better auditions, like things for Netflix, Hulu, A24, Hallmark, those kind of things. And that's basic. That was very long-winded, wasn't it? I'm sorry about that, Julie.
Don't apologize. I love that just share all of that because I was thinking I want to ask you these questions.
Oh, please do interrupt me.
No,
Yeah.
honestly, before we started, I'd said, didn't I? I've got a few thoughts of questions I wanted to ask, but we'll just see how the conversation goes. And to be honest, you've covered like quite a lot of the questions I had, which is brilliant because
Oh, good.
naturally we've just gone there. I guess one question I do have is with everything that you've just shared, for me looking in, one, first of all, what a Wonder Woman you are. Like I feel like everything you've just shared is from a place of, and you just said it, a human being. You want to be seen as a human first and not this person, what can I get? What can I do? And I
Yeah.
think when you do put yourself on a level with other humans, it's a different kind of energy, isn't it? And it's a different conversation that you're having and different experiences then come off the back of it. But with everything that you've just shared, would you say that's what self-leadership means to you in terms of going first, finding what isn't there and creating that for yourself?
That has definitely been my path. Yes. But I think self-leadership starts with radical accountability and radical truth.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, and I've been guilty of this, definitely, we we lie to ourselves a bit about where we're at or how far we are. And that's not to say like, cut the legs out from everything that you've accomplished, because I'm sure that all of your listeners at this stage in their lives have accomplished lots and lots of things. But still, when you want something, you're trying to project an image of much further along than you are so that you can fit in with where you would like to be. And what I have found is, like, honestly, just be real about where you're at because people are going to see it anyway. If you're not as skilled as you say you are, that's going to be really obvious really quickly. So get the skills, get the training, right? That's one thing. And I think this is a huge thing. It's like just go, where am I at? You know, and there's no wrong place to start. If you're an absolute beginner, but you have put your wish to do something on hold because of family, life, whatever, right? For 20 years. But you're like, hey, the thing that gave me the most joy in my life as a teenager was painting, and I want to explore that again. And oh my God, wouldn't that be amazing to have a career doing that? There's no saying that you can't do that now. But you must start from where you are, right? And if you need more skills, then get more skills. But if you're already skilled, and there are lots of people out there who are calling themselves amateurs, but their skill is at a professional level, then what is that other thing you're missing? Literally asking yourself, what am I missing? So if the answer is, well, nobody's buying my art, why not? Are they not are they not aware of your art? Are you not getting your art in front of people who can buy it, who can afford it? Are you outside of like major metropolitans, metropolises where people can see it, right? So what is that one specific thing that is keeping you from getting that one specific thing that you want? Because Betty Lou's art career will look she wants to sell on Etsy and have a storefront that's digital and that kind of a thing. And maybe Sally wants to do art fairs and Christmas markets and things like that. And maybe somebody else wants to like be in galleries and go that route. Well, those are three very different paths. So the first question is always, where do I specifically want to go? Like in a perfect world, what if I could just have what I wanted? What the heck do I want? So that is that first question that you need to answer. And then you kind of work backwards and go, well, what's keeping me from that? What just to get one step closer right now? And in every step, you'll find, we always, so here's what I have always found in my life, and just from being, a coach for so many different kinds of creatives, what I find is that people will like see an obstacle, and all of a sudden all the obstacles like will stack up and create this huge mountain or maybe a whole range of mountains. And they're like, how the hell am I supposed to get past that? Well, I can't. I guess it's too late. I better just give up. But the truth is, whenever you're doing anything, you start with the very first move. If you have to scale a mountain, what's the first thing you need? Your equipment, your shoes, your map, right? So you got to just figure out those very first steps and take them. And once you get a little bit closer, you're going to have some more questions that come up. And here's the other thing. When you get yourself in the room, so by organizing these events, workshops, seminars, whatever they are, with people who are a few steps ahead of you, first of all, they are going to be just naturally pointing out things or telling you about things that you probably didn't even think of. And you're, oh, do I need to have that? Oh, that's that. Oh, oh, oh. And all of a sudden it starts shaping your path. Or you can say, oh yeah, but that's not what I want.
Yeah.
Right? I actually want this. How do I get that? Do you know anybody who could help me get that? It what it does is it lets you let the path unfold. And not to be too metaphorical or too woo woo, because it's not woo woo. It's really very, very strategic, but also not trying to control everything. Like be open, right?
Yeah.
Be open to where it is, what it is that you need to get to where you want to go. And sometimes the answers are surprising. But the other thing that organizing these kinds of workshops, seminars, those kind of things does for you, we all know that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? And most of us, as creatives especially, are spending a lot of time with people just like us who are also sitting around complaining about what sucks about the industry. And that's not going to get you any further. So, by organizing these kinds of workshops, events, seminars, through the people, the experts that are teaching them, you're developing a relationship with them. And oftentimes you become friends with them. It's just kind of human nature.
Yeah.
And you find that you can automatically change your circle. And I don't mean just forget your friends, but you also have to, like, what do you want?
Yeah. I think it helps you, doesn't it, to gain the clarity of I'm on the path and this is definitely what I want. Or like you said, sometimes it's that thing where you set yourself on a path thinking this is what you want, but then as you're taking the steps and figuring it all out, you then kind of like, actually, that's not what I want. This is what I want. So you get to change course, don't you? And
Yeah.
the insights and the experience of other people and the wealth of knowledge and their skills, as you say, help then shape that path.
Yeah. And what I also find is people generally start off very generic.
Yeah.
I want to be a working artist. Okay. What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Because it looks, as we just went through the 3 different examples, and I'm sure there are many other examples, but that path can look very different, and each one of them could be very successful.
Yeah. So knowing that obviously it starts with clarity and knowing what you want. And I think typically as women, particularly as we're getting older, shall we say,
Better. We're getting better.
I'd say, yeah. I think sometimes it can be scary to actually say out loud and actually acknowledge what we do want. And so I think we can
Yes.
squash that down as well as our voices and our authority and everything else. And all of these things come up because we're lifing, we're maybe a partner, we maybe got a job, but then we've got this, as you called it, the pilot light that's there. Maybe it's flickering and it's not fully fired up. How would you say that you stay rooted in who you are during the messy times or the uncertainty or figuring it all out?
Yeah. Can I tell you a little story?
I'd love to, yeah.
Yeah. So I think when I first told my husband I'm going to relaunch my acting career, he was like, yeah, yeah, whatever. He didn't even know what that meant. My husband's an architectural engineer, German, right? No clue. And in the beginning, I think he thought a couple of years, we'll be done with this. We can move on. And it just kept getting more and more intense until he literally threatened me with divorce. And it it really in that moment made me confront so many things about myself, about our relationship, about what he was dealing with because he was afraid. I
Mm,
think, he was lashing out because he was afraid he was losing me. My answer to him, and it even surprised myself in the moment, was, it makes me emotional now to think about it. I said, I love you. And if you need to divorce me because of what I need to do, then that's what you need to do. But this is what I need to do. And if I stop now because you asked me to, one day I will hate you and I will hate myself for allowing you to do that to me. And that kind of, I, I, I guess, but I called his bluff, but I meant it.
mhm,
And so I think the answer is you kind of have to be uh, willing to ask yourself, what is it worth to you? And for me, I was willing to like ditch my marriage, right? And at that point, it had been, I was 18, almost 20 years into it. Now we've been together almost 30 years. So, and then also later, as my son saw that his dad, our my husband was suffering because he wanted me around like I had always been around, and
mhm.
I wasn't. I was working. I was flying around. I was doing stuff. I was, going to events. I was trying to get my career off the ground. And my son really also, accused me of being selfish. And I think it's a hard one because as women, we have been conditioned since the time we were very young that we need to sacrifice ourselves for our families.
Mhm,
But honestly, I started to question, what am I actually teaching my son? What is the message I'm giving him? Was my life just to like procreate and then I can shrivel up and die as long as I'm cooking dinner, for everybody and making sure what does that mean? And what does that mean for him going forward? Now, okay, he's your average white male, so he's already very privileged. But what does it mean for his daughters when he has them? What are we trying to teach the women of this world today? Because our lives have value beyond procreation. And your dreams matter beyond having them as just a dream. And I think for me, it was really important to also show my son that just because something is hard and looks impossible, like I mean, honestly, I was a 47-year-old American woman living in Germany trying to relaunch my acting career. I mean, I was the butt of a lot of jokes. And I think to say, okay, and so what? I'm doing it anyway. And I wanted to show him, like, do this. My life matters. Your life matters. And I think we have to get over this conditioning. And it's hard. I still have moments of it, especially like now even. Be really honest. My husband is now almost 70. He's almost 10 years older than I am. He wants to retire and he wants to travel more. And I'm trying to think like, how does this work?
Yeah.
How do I make this all work? Because I do love him and I do, you know, know what he's dealing with. He's thinking about his dad who died at 73. And we have to, as grown-ups, we have to take all of these things into consideration and figure out how to make it work in spite of this.
Mhm.
Now, I'll also say, like, what was it in 2000? Just as my acting career was really starting to get a lot of traction, I had a operation and I ended up, they screwed up my arm and ended up almost losing my left arm. And what ended up happening from that was I ended up getting the tips of my fingers amputated. And so in the beginning, I was always just trying to hide it, hide it, hide it. Um, but the truth of the matter is, in film and television, if something is not adding to a story, it's detracting from it. So that is also, I've leaned more into coaching at this point. I'm still acting if something comes up,
Mhm.
but I do think that things happen for you.
Mhm.
And maybe this is something that has happened for me. I mean, God could have been a little more subtle, but hey, next time, please, you know. Um, but always looking for like, okay, this has happened. You got to get through that ring of fire and then figure out like who are you on the other side of that?
Mhm.
And what does it mean? And so for me, honestly, I've been super, I'll be really honest. I've been super into like looking at narrow boats and wide beam boats. And like we have a dog, who I adore. And so, like, how can we travel and I can continue with my entrepreneurial business, right? So
Yeah.
I could continue my coaching. I can continue spreading the message of radical accountability and taking agency for what you need. But we could still kind of travel around Europe and have our dog with us, and my husband can play golf in all the different countries and things like that. So honestly, I'm still in the messy middle. I'm still trying to figure all this stuff out.
I
But
love
I
that
think
though.
that's life, right?
Yeah, 100%. But through everything that you've just shared for me, what I've taken is that you have fully backed yourself and you have decided and intentionally chosen to choose you,
Yeah.
regardless of how scary that might have felt, because I'm sure it did, of how messy it felt, of how uncomfortable it felt, of how perhaps sometimes maybe awful it felt because it was potentially going to impact your husband. But how amazing that in you doing that, you said now you've been married for almost 30 years. Clearly, you didn't divorce you at the time when you had
Right.
the
Yeah.
conversation. But I think you doing that, surely you have sent a message to your son and showed him exactly what it looks like to do that and how you decided I've got this dream, I'm gonna do it regardless of how old I am, regardless of how uncomfortable it is. Even just to your son and also your husband, it's a totally different energy, isn't it, when you show
Yeah.
up in that energy? And so if you could just share a message now with other women that are maybe in a place where they're like so uncertain, not sure of what the next step is, whether it's even possible, maybe conditioned similarly to the way that you've been, you've experienced and things. What would you want to share with them that would help them to own it even more, or even if they
Well,
don't?
yeah, I definitely, but I do want to correct one thing because it's not just about choosing myself
Yeah,
because the main thing in that was I knew that if I didn't do this
yeah,
because he asked me not to, it would destroy our relationship.
yeah,
So we were going to have to try it
Hmm.
in a way that looks, I guess, selfish for me. And you could say by putting myself first. But if I didn't do that,
Yeah.
then our relationship was going to die for sure. A slow, painful little death. And so that is one thing. I think it's understanding like choosing yourself doesn't necessarily mean just screw everybody else. But it's like how can you be true to yourself in a way that you are your best self?
Yeah.
And I still try and take my husband into consideration, our dog, my son, our son. I always say my son. He's mine. And but still me, I count too, and so do you, and so does everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that we forget that we count too. We are not just there as a part of a whole. We are a whole on our own.
Hmm.
So what can you do about that? Get really clear on what it is that you want to do, what that looks like. The second thing you can do is then look at what is that one thing I am missing right now to get me just one step closer to that ultimate goal. Is it proof that I can do that thing? Is it more skills? Is it better connections? Is it what is it? It is never a lack of resources. It is always a lack of resourcefulness.
What's that?
Yeah. And three, I would say like how can you bring other people into this journey? Because it's important to have community, real community. Like AI is obviously this is no Einstein statement here. It is changing everything. And it's also making us it's simulating connection
Yeah.
and not actually connecting us.
Hmm.
And I think connection is also really, really important, especially in niche industries, creative industries, right? And when I say creative, that could be anything from essential oils to photography,
Hmm.
right? It's just like your non-traditional type of stuff. Because have you ever heard that it was an article, I can't remember who wrote it, 1,000 True Fans?
I haven't, no.
Oh, okay. So the premise for this is each one of us, we only need 1,000 true fans to contribute $100, pounds, euros, whatever, a year in order to be earning $100,000.
Wow.
And so the reality is, and what is that? It's less than $10 a month. It's like $8 a month, right? I'm terrible at math, but something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So the reality is, as the world expands and explodes with AI, we're also going to have the opposite happening because that is the law of the universe, right? Where there's dark, there's light. What goes up comes down, right? What expands also contracts. And there will be people who are looking for real human connection in real ways and on much smaller platforms, right? And so the truth is, all of us could be living that life that we want to live if we focus on finding other people like us and like helping everybody to rise. So that was one thing I noticed with the workshops, right? Was yeah, I was helping myself, but I was also helping other people, to get better skills and we were all helping each other, like who are the good casting directors, what's auditioning right now, come help me with my self tape, right? Doing all these different kinds of things.
I love that.
Yeah.
That feels like a really lovely place for us to leave it. I could chat to you for like hours and hours and hours, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that the people listening could listen to you for hours because you've got so much just wisdom. I feel like wisdom, but realness as well. And I think that's super important. It is the human part of us that
Thank you.
the thing that I think a lot of us are attracted to. So if anybody watching right now and wants to come and get more of you and soak in more of you, where could they come and find you? Where are you hanging out?
So probably the number one place is on YouTube under Act Bold. My name is Ann Alexander-Sieder. Sounds like the tree, but it's Sieder. And I have a channel on YouTube. I run, like, if you're interested, like if the curator method has you're like, oh, that sounds super interesting. I would like to learn more about that. I run a free 5-day challenge every couple of months. So I'm not sure when this is coming out, but like, go to my website. It's act-bold.com. You can find me everywhere, honestly. I'm easily findable. And yeah, just like join me, and then you'll be kept in the loop about what's going on, what kind of things. But I am always doing free challenges or offering like GPTs to help people figure stuff out, or just doing lots of different things, exploring my own curiosity on those things and then sharing it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me. I've really loved it. Hope you've loved it as well. I hope everybody watching has loved it. I feel sure that they're going to have loved it. Um, Make sure that you go back and listen to this again because I feel like it's one of those conversations that you'll get so much, but when you listen to something the second time, even more kind of sets in and more light bulbs ping off and more insights come through. So I would really encourage you to do that. And I will see you on the next episode of How She Owns It. Thanks so much, Anne.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Julie.
Welcome.